Hi! So let's take a look at how to make your city more gooder by changing the layout and increasing your productivity, efficiency, and fun times. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is go to the Forge of Empire City Planner. That's available at the URL shown here. And if you've not registered an account, then click on the register button and register. I don't recall what's involved in that, but basically it's just giving your email address and getting a password. All right, so I've already done that, obviously. I'll go in here and I'm going to log in. And after I've logged in, I've got a whole bunch of cities that I've already worked on. Well, let's see what's involved in creating a new city. By the way, if you're already familiar with this part, if you've already logged in the City Planner, you know how that whole thing works, then skip ahead to a time that I don't know at the moment, but it's going to be
3:35.
All right, so let's create a new city. So click the plus button to create a new city. And I have a few options here. I can start from scratch, which I can't imagine why you'd want to. I can load an in-game city, meaning that I can load one of the cities that I can access. And that, by the way, is any city. I could load anybody's city here and take a look at it. Or I can load a shared city. And a shared city is one that somebody else has built. They've sent you a link. All right, so let's load an in-game city just to see how this whole thing works. So the city name, I'm going to call it Test City. And my server is in the good old US. And I'm going to grab a city out of, how about Cinerania? And I'm going to load my name. All right, here it comes. Down here is my new city, so Test City. So this is a representation of what my city looks like. Now, any changes that I make in here will not affect my actual city layout. So the City Planner is legitimately a planner. I can go in and redesign it, and then in the Forge of Empires application, that's where I would go and make my changes. But what's nice is that this is a much easier avenue toward making your changes. So, with that said, this is awfully confusing to look at. And this is where the City Planner really has a huge advantage. This button right here flattens everything. So it's as if a bomb went off and I can just see where things used to be. So I've got all of my great buildings or large buildings, and I've got my roads and my empty spaces and all of that stuff. So this allows me to click and drag and move things around so I can make space and redesign. So after I redesign this, I can then go into the application, the Forge of Empires application, and follow the steps that I've created in here and redesign my city so I can get more efficiencies, more goods, more goodnesses. All right, so that's it. That's how you do this. You just make a layout and you make it pretty, and then you move things around. So let's move on to actually redesigning a city. I'm going to load a city that does need some redesigning. So let's load this city, and we're going to call it Sample City. And it's on the US server. It's in Cinerania. So I have my sample city here. Let's open it up. In fact, I'm going to rename it to Sample City Original. So let's take a look at this sample city. All right, we've got it in our flattened out mode. Now this player is in late Middle Ages. And let's see some of the things that could probably stand to be fixed up in here. Well, first of all, we have a whole bunch of high Middle Ages buildings, residences. So those are taking up a lot of space, and they're not producing too many coins. They also have fairly low population for their space. We've got some estate houses. We have a manor from late Middle Ages. Here's another high Middle Ages house. So that's really what we want right there, is the apartment house. Now, another thing that's sort of an issue in here is that we've got lots of roads. And one of the key things to remember is that any large building, you want to have as few roads connecting to it as possible. So take a look at Santa's Workshop. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, what is it, about 19 roads touching Santa's Workshop. So that's 18 tiles that are being put to waste. All right. So the maximum number of roads that you want to have contacting a building, ideally, is just one. If you have one road touching a building, then you have maximum efficiency. Now, that's not always possible, but we can try to achieve that goal. Let's see what else we have. Well, we've got a gap here. We've got a few little random spaces that are empty. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. All right. So I don't want to mess with this original layout. I'm going to go back and create a duplicate. I'm going to duplicate the city, and I'm going to rename it Sample City Phase 1. Let's go into our sample city, our first phase. So what do we want to do? Well, let's get rid of these houses. Now, up here, you can see that the population is 917. So I've got to keep about 917 people. All right, so that's fine. So let's just get rid of anything that is not a apartment house or a manor. Great. So we've gotten rid of the apartment houses. We've gotten rid of everything except for the apartment houses. Let's also get rid of roads that we don't need to keep. In LMA, you want to stick with the rough paved roads. We'll get rid of these gravel roads and things. The other thing is large buildings should always be placed at the edge of your available space. So the town hall is a great example. This one is taking up a lot of space. So we're never going to use more than one road connection. So we don't want to have anything on, we want to have nothing on as few sides as possible, if that makes any sense. I don't think it does. So I'm going to move these roads out of the way. Right now, I don't care about roads too much. Okay, my town hall is in place, and you can see after I've made my changes, I have negative 4,729 people. So I also want to clear up a little bit more space to be able to make some of these changes, and a big use of space is my army. So one hot tip, if you regularly play in the guild expeditions, you shouldn't need that much of an army. You should be earning them on those every four expeditions or whatever they're called. You should win them. So try to have as few army barracks or what have you within your city. Either way, you can still build them back later on, but let's delete these now. Because again, I'm not deleting anything for real, but I am making space. So goodbye, longbow. Okay. Now, you'll notice that this city has very few great buildings. It just has the Tower of Babel, Lighthouse, and Oracle. It is also lacking in a few buildings that we'd really want to have, like the Castle del Monte, CDM, or Cathedral of Aachen, COA, and Alcatraz, which is a huge boon. So we'll deal with all of that in a little bit. So for now, we're just going to make space, and we're going to recover our apartment houses. Now, I could put them somewhere that I think they're going to work. Now, what I should also mention is that during this time, because he's replacing his apartment houses, we need to do this in steps. So he can't replace all of the apartments at once, otherwise there won't be any population. He'd have to clear out every building in here to be able to get his population back. So what we're going to do is we are going to add our apartment houses back in. We're going to try to take up as little space as possible and get all of our roads connected. Let's keep adding some apartment houses. Okay, we've added enough apartment houses. We need to add one more bit of road to this little section. So the goal for this player right now is to recreate this layout in his city so that he has the right amount of population. He doesn't have his military units, which we're going to keep out for the moment, and he can continue to operate the city as normal. All right, but we've created a lot of extra space, and that will allow us to start to really revise the city. The reason why we're doing it this way is because, like I said, you can't just delete residences. The residence gives you population. Therefore, if you want to upgrade your houses, you kind of have to do it piecemeal. So over the next week or so, he'll recreate this layout. All right, I'm going to save this and move on to phase 2. Here's where we're going to start making some big changes. Now, one of the things that's missing from here is some of those big buildings that we'd like to have, the CDM and COA and Temple of Relics as well. So how are we going to do all this layout? Where are we going to put things? Well, I want to go back to that point that the fewest number of roads attached to a large building is what you want to have. So to make that happen, and also large buildings should be placed near the edges of your city. So with that said, let's start making some space. I'm going to take these victory towers and just move them out of the way. I've got a lot of little tiny pieces to move around. So let's do that. We're going to clear out this whole section, except for large buildings. All right, we've moved almost everything. Let's also get rid of some of the lower age goods buildings. They are cheap to restore, and we'll need some space to move things around. So I'm going to get rid of some of these little guys. But I'm also going to take notes on what I've removed. I'm going to make a note here in Notepad++. I'm going to get rid of the jewelry manufacturer. I'm also going to get rid of the limestone mason and the dye works. And looks like I need to get rid of a marble mason and maybe a beekeeper. All right, I've got a lot of space, so now I can start moving my big buildings. So let's move Santa's workshop right over here. Ho, ho, ho. Let's move the lighthouse right there. The Tower of Babel. You know what? I'm going to go the other way around, only because I think lighthouse is prettier. All right, now I should put something here, and I really want to put something big. So since we mentioned that there are some big cities, rather some big buildings missing, let's go on and put the great building in here. Now, obviously, it doesn't create it in the city, in the real city, but we can plan our space. So I'm going to go into the great buildings list over here, and I'm going to grab my Castle del Monte, put it right there. Great. So now that that's there, let's also throw in the Cathedral of Aachen. I'll put that right there. And let's start planning out how our roads are going to fit. Now, you could just draw a road right here, but if I did that, I'm actually not going to be using my space very efficiently. So instead, I'm going to make one connection there. I'm going to connect it to my road, leaving a 2x gap. So now I'm effectively creating an avenue. Let's do that. Keep moving our roads down. The other building that's missing is the Temple of Relics. This friend of mine plays quite a bit in the guild expeditions, so he would really like to have the Temple of Relics. So let's add that in. I'm going to need to move it down here, so let's see if we can find a place for it. Well, I'm going to need to fill in these gaps, so I want to fill them in with buildings that aren't going to go away. Whenever you're making these things at the edges of your city layout, whatever's closest to your town hall, whatever's closest to your big buildings, you should always try to have consistent buildings that will not change over time. So here's a good one. The Pillar of Heroes. Those are good ones to put in one place. He's got two of them, so we'll put them over here. Another one that he's not going to get rid of is a Shrine of Knowledge that gives forge points. I know he's got one. There it is. Put that right there. And he probably won't get rid of his manor house anytime soon. Let's move maybe another manor house in there. I know there is one. Oh, Mighty Maple. It's a silly name, but it's a good one to put up there. All right. Let's keep moving some stuff around. I can delete a few of these roads. I know that we're not going to need them. Now I can create the Temple of Relics. Let's also let's use some of this space a little bit more efficiently down here. I'm going to put in the Zeus. Cool. Okay, so now I need to connect everything. And let's figure out what makes the most sense in here. Probably, given the age, a 4x space would make the most sense. So I'm going to add a road here. And let's add some 4x things. Brass Foundry, and Royal Cascade. That works for me. That puts the Royal Cascade somewhere where it's not going to be affected very much. Now we've got some space here, and we need to figure out how to connect all of this stuff in. So nice. I've got another 4x spot. I'm going to save this. I'm going to take the Saltworks, put that here. And now I'm going to take that Mighty Maypole and put it here instead. And I know there's another manor in here. I will find it eventually. I'm going to move a road down to here. So now I'm going to put my Pillars of Heroes down here instead. And I'm going to move my Winners Plaza, Winner, and another Winners Plaza right there. Great. So eventually I'll find that manor house wherever it is. There it is. Put that right there. Cool. So now I'm going to fill in these gaps with some victory towers. Cool. And I've got a little gap right here. Is there anything that isn't a house that I can put in there? Doesn't really look like it, so I'm going to throw in some houses. Oh, I know what I'm going to throw in. That's a perfect shape for my rogue hideout. Boom. Okay, cool. So look at this. I've got a whole bunch of buildings, including ones that he doesn't have quite yet, set up in here. And it's taking up far fewer roads to connect all of these things. So let's move on to phase 3, where we're going to build another avenue that has some stuff in here. All right, so I'm going to make a copy of this and rename it. Okay, so now that we've got phase 1 complete, let's move on to creating another avenue. Now I can do a 4x avenue like this, but what really makes sense here is to do a 5x. You'll see what I mean. So I'm going to move these roads around, and I'm going to make a big row of apartment houses. And anything that's not an apartment house, I'm going to just move out of the way for right now. Let's put all of them in a row. You know, this water spout fountain thing here, it's not worth keeping. So I'm going to delete it. Same goes for the cypress that I've seen a few times. The thing about these is that when people motivate or polish your city, they oftentimes get polished first. And you don't really want that. You want them to be polishing things that are nice. Let's get rid of those cypresses. Blech. Okay, I need one little road connection to my Zeus. Kind of breaking the rules here, but that's okay. I can fill that in with some watchfires. Okay, so now let's start putting in buildings that aren't going to go away. Again, closest to Town Hall, you want them to be as stable as possible. So we're going to throw in our Oracle. It's kind of fun to keep. I mean, why get rid of it? It's cute. Wishing Well, Shrine of Inspiration. Now here's an iffy one, the Champion's Retreat. So that's going to go in for now, but if he builds an Alcatraz, we do want to get rid of that because you don't want to be building champions. Athlete Living Quarters is a good one to keep there. And I think we'll just fill in the rest of this with some production buildings. There we go. And is there anything else I can throw in up here? Probably just another apartment house. Be great to put in a Shrine of Knowledge there if we could. And that's it. All right, so now we're really getting things laid out. Look at how much space we have left over, and that's certainly more space than we started with. So now we can move on to making another avenue. Moving on to phase 4, let's duplicate it again and create our phase 4 city. Now what we want to do is we want to create another avenue like we've got here. This is a 5x avenue. Let's create a 6x avenue instead. So we've got, that'll help us deal with the different sizes of buildings that we've got. So that Alabaster Mason, let's get rid of that, or not get rid of it. Let's move it up here so it's next to the Renaissance Mansion. And Look at that. We've already got 6 by, so that's great. So we'll move that there, and here's a windmill. Move these apartments out of the way. Let's just get everything that is 3 wide in here. Some roperies. Making rope. So now we've got a problem. We've got the Christmas layout. This is going to be a bit of a challenge because we want to maximize this, and ideally we want it to fit within this 6 by range. So for right now, I'm just going to move these guys around and get them in here. And just build my road. I'll deal with the layout in a little bit. So let's zoom in on the Christmas layout here and see what we can do. Oh, there's a cypress. Okay, this is going to be a bit more of a challenge. I need to figure out how to get these things to connect to each other. Now, you can go to the Forge of Empires Wikipedia page or Wikia page to find out what the values are of each of these, but I can tell you offhand. So Moose Meadow has to touch a road. We've got 2 of them. And the Sugar Baker's booth also has to touch a road. We've got 2 of those. And Toy Maker's booth needs to. Nothing else does. Now, each of these require 4 unique building connections, and then Madame Fortuna's tent needs 4, and Straw Star tent needs 4. Everything else needs 3. So we have to somehow get all of these connected together in a way that will maximize efficiency. That's going to be fun because he's got 2 sets, more than 2 sets. So let's see here. I'm going to have to just play with this. Hey, I think that works. Got 4 there, 4 unique ones there, 4 unique ones there, 4 unique. All right, good. I think this all works correctly. Now, I want to move this, though. I'd rather keep a 4 by section down here. So let's just move this guy up. 4. Cool. So we've got some space. I think I actually left it at 5, whatever. So we've got a gap here that I can put a building down here if I need to. I can remove that road if I need to. So there's a lot of space that's available now. My Christmas set is pretty well maximized. I've got 3 more forge points out of this than originally were available. We still have a lot of space that we can add some buildings in here. We've got a good 4x3 section. And again, I want to go over one of the big concepts, which is big buildings, few roads. Okay, so let's move on to phase 5. Now, we don't have too much space over here, and creating another avenue might not be worthwhile. So instead, let's start creating, these are kind of north-south avenues, if you will, or north-west, southeast. So we'll create some avenues going in the other direction. We've got a lot of roads left over. Okay, so we also want to get our production buildings in that we got rid of earlier. So let's go find those. You know, I'm going to need a little road for that. Once he adds in this expansion, then we'll continue our avenue. For now, we'll just do this. We'll cheat. We got a lot of roads anyway. Throw that there. So he had a dye works. We'll throw that in. And the beekeeper. Blah. And we can rebuild those military buildings if we like. Again, don't build them if, and in fact, if you're in LMA, the only one that's, I think, that's really worth building is is the longbow. And that's it. So now we've got all these victory towers to do something with. I'll throw them into the Christmas set, and we'll fill in a couple gaps up here. Maybe some of the gaps that are over here. And we've got a ton of extra roads, so let's get rid of those. So there we go. There's our layout. We can still add in other buildings if we need to. We've got tons of extra space now. We've built 3 new great buildings. If we want to see what this looks like here, let me save it first. Now, look at what happens. I can get rid of these 3 great buildings that weren't built. Look at how much space is available now. Let's go back and take a look at what it used to look like. There was room for one more, maybe, great building. Now we've got room to add Alcatraz. And we could add Chateau, Frontenac. So there's now room for Alcatraz, Chateau Frontenac, COA, CDM, and the Temple of Relics, and everything else that he needs. Pretty cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're able to put some of these lessons to use, and I hope that you have pants. Bye.